Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was a late Friday night when Emma decided to catch the last showing at the old, rundown movie theater on the edge of town. The place had been abandoned for years before it reopened, but locals whispered strange stories about it, strange noises, unexplained shadows, even people vanishing. Emma didn't believe in those things. She just wanted to see the new horror film everyone was talking about. The lobby was dimly lit, with flickering neon signs and cracked popcorn machines that looked like they hadn't worked in decades. The air smelled stale, a mix of old carpet, dust, and something metallic underneath. Emma bought her ticket and headed into the screening room, which was smaller than she expected. The seats were threadbare, and the screen had scratches that caught the light eerily. As the film started, Emma noticed a man sitting a few rows ahead. He wore a dark trench coat and a hat pulled low over his face. His presence was unsettling, but the theater was nearly empty, so she told herself he was just a latecomer. Midway through the movie, the power flickered once, then again. The screen went black for a moment, and a low hum filled the room. When the image returned, Emma realized something was off. The characters on screen seemed distorted, their eyes too large, smiles too wide. The film was no longer the one she came to watch. It had turned into something else, something grotesque. Emma felt a cold chill crawl up her spine. The man in the trench coat was no longer sitting ahead. In fact, he was nowhere to be seen. A soft whispering began from the speakers, low and unintelligible at first, then louder, clearer. It sounded like voices calling her name. Her heart pounded. She stood up, ready to leave, but the exit doors were locked. Panic set in. The whispers grew into desperate cries, and shadows moved along the walls like they had a life of their own. Emma's phone screen was dead. No signal, no light. Then she heard footsteps behind her, slow, deliberate. She spun around, but the row was empty. The lights dimmed further, and the screen glitched again, now showing her own face staring back at her from the film. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. Emma bolted toward the side emergency door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers surrounded her now, a chorus of voices begging her to stay. The last thing she saw was a shadowy figure of the man reappearing in front of her, reaching out with long, thin fingers. Then darkness swallowed everything. The next morning, the theater was open again. The manager claimed no one had been inside all night. Emma was never seen again, but sometimes, when the lights flicker during a late show, the screen shows a new face among the characters. A pale woman with wide eyes and a silent scream frozen on her lips.
Story number 2.
It was a late Friday night when a small group of friends decided to catch the last showing at an old, rundown movie theater on the edge of town. The marquee flickered weakly, its letters half-lit and faded, promising a cult horror film no one had heard of. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of stale popcorn mixed with something metallic, like rusted blood. The theater had a few scattered patrons, mostly couples and loners, but something felt off the moment they stepped in. As the lights dimmed and the trailers began, the group noticed the screen flicker strangely, as if the projector was struggling. The film started, grainy and distorted, but it drew them in with an unsettling energy. The movie was about a haunted theater, one where a projectionist had mysteriously vanished decades ago, rumored to still haunt the building, seeking revenge on anyone who dared watch his cursed reels. The friends laughed nervously at the meta-horror, but the unease in the air grew. Suddenly, during a quiet scene, the film warped and glitched. A shadowy figure appeared on the screen, not part of the movie. It was faint, but unmistakable. A man with hollow eyes, standing just behind the actors, staring directly at the audience. The crowd murmured, confused. Then the lights flickered violently. The projector whined and sparked, and the screen went black. The theater was plunged into darkness except for the faint glow from emergency exit signs. Whispers and shuffling noises echoed from the back rows. The friends tried to stay calm, assuming it was a technical glitch, but then they heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming down the aisle behind them. No one else moved, but the footsteps got closer, closer, until a cold breath brushed the back of their necks. They spun around, but no one was there. The emergency lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to crawl along the walls. One friend's phone suddenly lit up, the screen cracked, displaying a chilling message: "Don't leave." Panic set in as the group scrambled for the exit, but the doors wouldn't budge. The sound of the projector revving back to life filled the room, and the screen flickered on again. Only this time, the film had changed. It now showed real-time footage of the theater's interior. The camera angle was from behind the friends, capturing their every terrified move. As they watched themselves on the screen, the shadowy figure appeared again, this time much closer, reaching out from the flickering film toward the real world. The projector's humming grew deafening, drowning out their screams. One by one, the friends disappeared, swallowed by the darkness creeping out from the screen like tendrils of smoke. The next morning, the theater was empty, the only sign of life, the still-running projector casting a blank white light onto the empty seats. The police found no trace of the missing friends, only their phones on the floor, each cracked screen frozen on the same message: "Don't leave." The theater was shut down soon after, but locals swear they can still hear the projector running late at night and see flickering shadows moving behind the dusty curtains, waiting for the next audience to arrive.
Story number 3.
Late one rainy evening, a small-town movie theater sat almost deserted, the kind of place that had seen better days. The flickering neon sign buzzed faintly outside, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. Inside, only a handful of patrons had come out to watch the midnight horror marathon. Among them was Mark, a college student who loved old horror films and had heard rumors about this theater's dark past, but never believed them. As the feature film started, a grainy black and white horror flick, the lights dimmed completely. The air grew thick with the smell of stale popcorn and something else, something faintly metallic. Mark settled into his seat, eyes glued to the screen. But about halfway through the movie, the projector began to malfunction. The picture wobbled and flashed, then suddenly went completely black. The theater was plunged into silence and darkness, except for the faint glow of the emergency exit signs. At first, everyone murmured nervously, assuming it was just a technical glitch. Then, a slow, chilling tapping sound echoed from the back of the theater. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't the rain. It wasn't anyone knocking. It seemed to come from inside the walls, growing louder and more deliberate, like someone or something was trying to get out. People started whispering, shifting uneasily in their seats. Mark stood up, flashlight from his phone cutting through the dark as he headed toward the back, drawn by the noise. As he approached the old storage room behind the screen, the tapping stopped abruptly. The door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, Mark found nothing but dust-covered reels of old films and broken equipment. Just as he turned to leave, he caught movement out of the corner of his eye. A shadow flickering in the corner of the room, too fast to be natural. Suddenly, the emergency light snapped off. The theater was plunged into absolute darkness, colder than before. The faint metallic smell now turned acrid like rust and blood. Mark fumbled for his phone, but the screen was cracked and unresponsive. Then, from the pitch black, a whisper came, soft but unmistakable: "Don't leave." Frozen, Mark felt breath on the back of his neck. A cold hand brushed past his shoulder. Panic surged, and he bolted back toward the auditorium. The tapping returned, now surrounding him from all directions, coming from the walls, the ceiling, even under the floor. His footsteps echoed, but something else echoed too, slow, dragging footsteps, following him. He reached the main hall, where the other patrons had huddled together, faces pale and eyes wide with terror. The exit doors, which should have been unlocked, slammed shut with a deafening bang. The projector flickered back on, but the screen didn't show the horror film. It showed the theater itself, empty and decaying, as if a live feed from inside a nightmare. And in that grainy image, Mark could see shadowy figures standing in the seats, staring directly at him. The tapping turned into knocking, louder and faster. The walls seemed to breathe, closing in. Someone screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the dark. Mark tried the doors again. They wouldn't budge. The shadow figures on the screen began to move, crawling down from the seats toward the camera, toward him. The lights snapped back on. The theater was empty. No audience, no staff, just the faint smell of rust and old popcorn lingering in the stale air. The screen was blank. Outside, the rain had stopped. But Mark's heart pounded as he realized he was alone, truly alone, with something still watching from the darkness. The theater's doors finally creaked open, but Mark never looked back. He ran into the night, the whisper still in his ears, "Don't leave." To this day, the old theater stands abandoned, its projector silent. But sometimes on stormy nights, people passing by swear they hear tapping from the inside, as if the walls are trying to tell a story only the brave or foolish dare to listen to.